Okay, welcome to week 2 of CTE 361. This week we're working on standards. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off briefly here with the slideshow presentation, but then we're going to jump into the assignment. We're not actually going to go through this entire PowerPoint. So standards, as we mentioned a little bit in week 1, I gave you just a very quick overview of standards, but they're a set of frameworks for your content area. And they explain what somebody should know and be able to do by the time they finish your course. You could have national standards, state standards, a combination of the two. What we're going to do in the demonstration here is we're going to look at the content standards for engineering and technology education, which is my background, but we're also going to tie into the Common Core standards, and we're going to tie into the next generation science standards. And we'll talk a little bit more about why we do that and how we do that when we get into the curriculum document. So your standards, they're basically a guide of what you should be doing in your class. They lay out the benchmarks that your students need to know when they leave your classroom. The reason that we use standards is we want some consistency from school to school. There was a point in time, for instance, where a student in New York City could take a class called Algebra 2. A student in San Francisco takes the same class called Algebra 2, and the content in those classes was entirely different. The student in one class was doing essentially 8th grade math, and the student in the other class was doing the equivalent of pre-calculus material. So the standards were a way of equalizing that so that if a student took the same course in 2 different schools, they'd be studying the same content. Now you as a teacher have the ability to teach that content in whatever way you want, whatever methods you want to use to deliver that content, but the content needs to be the same, and that's the purpose of using standards. When you look at a standards document, you're going to see that we have big ideas basically broken into smaller ideas. Typically they call these different strands of the standards. There's lots of different terminology for it. But what we're going to look at right here, this is a piece of the Common Core standards. Now I know you're not a reading teacher or a mathematics teacher, but you still need to be teaching those concepts in your classroom. But you're going to teach those concepts specific to your content area. So we're going to take a very quick look at the 9th grade Common Core reading standard. So the big idea is integration of knowledge and ideas. And then that's broken down into 4 separate standards, and they give the standards some sort of a fancy coding. Every standard will have their own coding. But underneath that coding, there will be a description of what that particular standard is supposed to do. So for this particular standard, the student needs to be able to translate quantitative or technical information expressed in words in a text into visual form. So they've got to be able to take some technical information. So in your class, it could be a technical manual or a textbook, and they've got to be able to express that in their own words, or they've got to be able to take that and represent it in pictorial form. Right? So that's something very reasonable that your students could be doing in their classroom. That's also part of the Common Core standards. Okay, so we'll take a look at that standard again. The big idea, integration of knowledge and ideas. They break that idea down with their coding scheme, and then an explanation of what that particular standard consists of. All right. So now we'll take a look at a standard from the technology area. Okay, so this is standard 19 from the Standards for Technological Literacy. So students will be able to develop an understanding of and be able to use and select manufacturing technologies. All right, and then I selected just the 9th through 12th grade standards. They actually have standards from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. But these are just the 9th grade standards, which is why they start with the letter L and not the letter A. The kindergarten standards would be letter A. So a student should understand that servicing keeps products in good operating condition, that materials have different qualities and may be classified as natural, synthetic, or mixed, etc., etc., etc. So you've got all of these different standards. So if I was teaching a manufacturing course in engineering and technology education, I would look at these standards, and this would be a piece of the framework that I would use to build my curriculum. Okay. So you need to find the standards for your content area. Every content area should have standards. They might not necessarily all have standards that are quite as well defined as the 2 that I just showed you. But if you have a national or state organization, that would be the first place to look. So for me as a technology teacher, I would look to the International Technology and Engineering Education Association, because they're the ones that have developed the standards. And then a lot of states adopt their own versions of those standards. So you can go to the KDE website and see if they have standards for your particular organization. If you have both national and state standards, you can decide whether you're going to use one, the other, or both. Typically, if I'm teaching in a state that has state frameworks as well as national frameworks, I would align to both of those in my curriculum. Why should I even bother using standards? Well, number one, it's going to give your program some legitimacy. You don't want to just be teaching stuff that you think the students ought to know. You really want to be, as they say, standing on the shoulders of giants. Take the work that a lot of other people have pulled together and vetted and determined to be good and worthwhile to teach, and that's what you should be aligning yourself to. Plus, it also keeps you focused on what's really important. Okay? We're not perfect. We forget. We can leave items out. But when you have that list of standards in front of you, it keeps you focused on the key points that you need to cover in your course. Okay. And then the next question is, you might ask, well, why should I even be bothering with Common Core? You know, Common Core is reading, writing, and mathematics. You know, I'm a career and technical teacher. I shouldn't be doing that in my classroom. Well, you don't need to cover every single aspect of the Common Core in your class, but as any teacher outside of the core curriculum, you ought to be supporting the Common Core. And what that means is you're already teaching mathematics, reading and writing concepts in your class anyway. Doesn't matter what subject area you're teaching, you're covering those concepts. Really what you want to do is give yourself some credit for what you're already doing in your class. And on the flip side of that, there might be some things that you're not doing that you could very easily integrate into your classroom. Your students should be reading material specific to your content area. If you're teaching an automotive class, they've got to be able to go into manuals, they've got to be able to read journals, magazines, related to that content area. Right? So you're probably already doing that stuff, or you could easily add it to your class. But look through those standards and find those things that you can align to. Right? And that's also going to show that you're being supportive of that core curriculum. You got to remember that you're an elective area. You're an area that can very easily be cut from that school when they need to cut budgets. And if you're somebody who's, you know, refusing to support the rest of what that school's mission and goals are, you know, you're probably going to be the first one that gets cut when budgets get tight. You know, so you want to keep that sort of thing in mind too. As I said, you know, you are an elective area. Students need to want to take your course. If they don't want to take it, they don't have to. If your numbers are not high enough to support your course, you know, your program's going to get cut. So you have to have an attractive enough program to get students into it, but at the same time, you have to have some rigor in that course. You can't just be a fun place to hang out where kids have a good time. They have to be learning something when they walk out of your classroom. And it is possible to do both of those things. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to skip over some of this. You can go through this PowerPoint on your own. It gets into some of the different approaches to teaching, the different philosophies in teaching. And then the second half of this PowerPoint, after it says where you can stop here, this is stuff that's specific for industrial training. So if some of you are not planning on becoming classroom teachers but are looking to go out into industry, that'll give you a brief idea of how to go in and do a task analysis. Okay, but for this week we want to focus on standards. All right, so what I've done is I've opened up Blackboard. We're logged into the course, and I want to open up this week's assignment. I just want to show you how you go about completing this. So I'm going to click on the assignments link. That's going to bring me to the assignments section. All right, so standards and framework, this is due on September 8th. Okay, you have until 11:59 p.m., so just before one second before midnight on Tuesday night, September the 8th, to turn that in. What I want to do is click on this little link right here, the attached file. That's going to be the template for your assignment. Each week you'll have a template to work from. All right, so at the top of this template, you've got instructions explaining what I want you to do. And then there's a little dashed line. You can delete everything above the dashed line before you go to turn this in. You might want to leave that there while you're working on this. So you have the instructions in front of you. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to work through this document and you're going to fill in the blanks. So at the top where it says course title, you've got to come up with a title. This can be a working title that you come up with for now. This is going to be the course that you develop throughout the semester. So by the end of this course, by the end of CTE 361, you're going to have developed the curriculum for a course either that you teach, that you think you might teach one day if you're not already in the classroom, or a course that you want to teach that your school isn't offering yet. You can develop the curriculum for that. Underneath that, you have to come up with the standards for your content area. So I want you to supply the hyperlink to the online resource where you can get those standards, and then you're going to copy and paste the specific standards that you're addressing in the course. Don't put standards in here that you're not going to use. If you're not addressing the standard in your course, don't put it in there, because I'm going to expect that anything you add in here, you're going to cover somewhere in your curriculum document. Underneath that, you're going to do the same thing. I've already given you the link to the Common Core Standards, so you can copy paste that link into your browser, and that will bring you to the Common Core Standards. And you're going to go through those standards, select the ones that you feel apply, and enter those in. And then underneath that, we have the science standards. And the reason I added the science standards in is in the CTE area, we almost all cover some form of science in our classroom. It could be a very basic or fairly complex science concept. But I want you to take a look at those standards and see which ones you're doing. Again, because if you're doing stuff that supports the science program in your high school, that's only going to make your program stronger. So take a look through those standards. There's probably a lot more in there than you realize that you actually would use, particularly in the engineering area. And then down at the bottom, I've included the technology standards. Now these are really for the engineering and technology teachers, not so much for the CTE or vocational teachers that are working in the area technology centers. But you can go ahead and take a look at those as well, because you may find things in there that relate to your area, because we do cover manufacturing and construction, medical technology in the engineering and technology area. So you may find some standards in there that you could address. I've actually given you 2 links. One of them you can actually copy and paste from. The first document's a PDF file. It won't let you copy paste out of that document. And if there are other standards that you want to align to, that you wanted to include, you can include those as well. All right, so I'm going to go back out here to Blackboard. I'm going to click on the course documents link. I'm going to click on the sample assignments folder. And then in here I've got a standards and frameworks document. All right, now this is a sample of what I would expect your assignment to look like. So for the purpose of this course, I'm developing a curriculum as well. This is just a sample that I'll provide each week. So I'm developing a robotics course. Okay, I was a technology teacher, and robotics was one of the areas that I taught. So that's why I'm using this. So for me, the engineering and technology standards, which we commonly refer to as the standards for technological literacy, are the standards that I would build to. So there's my link to the standards document. Then underneath, I've copy and pasted just the standards that I feel I cover in this course. Right? So I have Standard 1, students develop an understanding of the characteristics and scope of technology. Then underneath that, the specific strands within that standard that I'm covering. Then I have standard number 2, number 4, number 5, and number 9. Then down here we've got standard 10, 11, and 17. So you can see I've skipped a lot of the standards. There were standards within that document that I didn't feel I was covering, so I'm not going to include them. I'm only going to put in the standards that I know my course is going to align to. And then I've picked a few of the Common Core standards that I'm addressing in this particular course. Again, you don't have to go crazy and add a lot of those standards, but go through the ones that you think you realistically would apply in your class. Again, the science standards, the next generation science standards, we have the link to the standards. And then again, I just copy pasted out of that standards document the standards that I feel I'm using in my course. All right, so this will take you a little bit of time to do. Reading through these documents isn't a very quick thing. But once you've located the standards that you're going to use, it's just a matter of copy and pasting those standards into this document and then formatting it. So when we have our finished curriculum binder, this is going to be one of the first things that we see. So if somebody's reviewing your course and they want to say, well, what standards have you built this course on? You're going to show them very specifically exactly what standards you're aligning to. When you're ready to turn this assignment in, you're going to click on the Assignments tab. You're going to click on Standards and Frameworks. You're going to click on the Browse My Computer button. You're going to locate the file that you want to attach. You're going to select that file. You're going to click on Open. And then you're going to click on Submit. And that'll turn the assignment in. That's it. If you have any questions, please email me or post on the discussion board. And we look forward to working with you this week. Good luck.